This is News 12 Lock Hall.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Neil Gordon. Thanks for staying up with us. Personal injury can include any type of injury, from a traffic accident to a fall to an injury caused by a medical mistake. Some injuries may occur due to criminal activity such as DUI or assault. Well, in any case, if you've been injured, you need to know what your rights are under the law. If you have a question about any type of personal injury, we invite you to give us a call right now. We're going to take your questions live. The number up on the screen, 803-442-4551. We want to let you know what's coming up on the dockets. Next Sunday, you can ask us anything, and then in light of Mother's Day on May the 13th, Mom in the Law, and then on May the 20th, Hurt on the Job. We'll be looking at workers' compensation. Well, joining us this week and every week from the Vic Hawk Law Firm is Vic Hawk, who happens to be a personal injury attorney, and it's good that you are, because that's actually the topic we're going to hit on
Absolutely. Tonight. And this is a topic that's dear to my heart. We got involved with personal injury work because I felt bad about what I saw going on, and that is a lot of the members of our community going to counsel who advertise on a regular basis, but they're really not true trial lawyers, and they wholesale the claims. They jump out of claims when there's any work involved where you might have some dispute over liability, and there's no threat to the insurance company that the company will ever be brought to trial, because the lawyers don't try cases, and the public doesn't know that. And so I saved the money for it, started this program about a year ago, and we have really been able to develop our personal injury practice and help a lot of people. I want to remind you to reach our website. You go to vichawklaw.com. Thank y'all for staying up. Tell your friends about us, and come see us. As we've done in the past, we bring on real trial lawyers, people who grew up in the community, lawyers who make the commitment to become the kind of lawyer that's necessary to really help people. And tonight we brought on a native son from South Carolina. We brought in Everett Chandler. Everett Chandler grew up in the Sally Wagner area. He was a prosecutor for 7 years, and now has been in private practice for 7 years and doing criminal and civil work. His office is there in Aiken, and he's a real treat to have on tonight. Everett, can you tell our viewers what they should do when an insurance adjuster calls you the day after a wreck?
Well, first of all, thanks for having me, Vic. One of the things that happens, and I'm glad you mentioned that it's important to have a lawyer who is actually focused on representing your interests and being able to represent your interests in court. A lot of people bring in individuals who, frankly, are trying to come in, collect, or wholesale your case, and then ultimately step out when it looks like there might be liability in dispute. Initially, when an accident happens, individuals receive a call immediately from an insurance adjuster. Many of them mean well, but initially it's important for all of the viewers to know that they do not represent your interests. They represent the interests of the insurance company. A lot of people initially talk to them as their friends and begin to not clearly articulate their injuries. First of all, we're not complainers, so what happens? We minimize the extent of the injury, and as a result, because these conversations are recorded, ultimately they will use this against many people. So that's a major mistake that happens initially when someone is injured and receives a call from an insurance company.
And Everett, in a situation where an adjuster calls,
yes.
What is the mistake that the viewers make when they discuss their injury? What do we see time and time again, whether it be Georgia or South Carolina?
Well, first of all, a lot of times they admit guilt. So going to the liability issue, they'll ask a question, was there any way that you could have avoided the accident? And so ultimately someone says, well, maybe I could have braked a little earlier. And in many ways that brings on the issues, as you already know, of the comparative negligence or the contributory negligence that potentially could lessen the value of their claim.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Vic.
And another thing I want y'all to realize is that when you're talking to the insurance adjuster the day after, many times you describe your injuries as being involving the ones that hurt you the most at that point in time.
Right.
When in reality, the injury that causes you the chronic or long-term problem, or the problem that turns out to be one that requires serious medical care and follow-up, is something that is just a nagging neck pain, nagging low back pain, rather than the injury to the elbow, and you hardly mention it, and then as a result, down the road, when it manifests itself, which is very common, and when it manifests itself, the insurance adjuster has a recording saying that you had an injury to your elbow, and you forgot to mention the small pain that you started off with in your neck or your back.
And I'm sure it's real important, Everett, not to sign away your rights on that, to get the full medical care before, just to make sure you're okay before you agree to sign anything, correct?
Absolutely. You want to make sure that you're fine. Unfortunately, there are a lot of accidents where people are not seriously injured, and of course, it's important that people realize this is not the lottery, so it's not like we're trying to get a tremendous amount of money, but if you've been checked by a physician and you feel comfortable, you feel like everything's okay, then at that point it would be fine for you to move on. But I would suggest that anyone contact a very capable trial attorney, as Mr. Hawk has already indicated, who will advise you on the particulars of your case with all of the specific issues that come up and before you sign anything, as you were alluding to.
And before we head to the break, we want to once again let you know the telephone number to call, which is 803-442-4551. And before we take a break, a lot of folks tuning in may be thinking we're just talking about car accidents, but you might trip and fall outside of a neighbor's home or by the pool as we work our way into the warm months. And you were even telling me off air, we're coming into the summer where high school football is so big in this area, and you've represented a couple of families in wrongful death cases.
Unfortunately, we have in this area and also in the PD area of South Carolina, we've unfortunately had to meet with a family who lost a loved one because the coaching staff failed to follow some of the requirements that are laid out when it comes to avoiding heat strokes for the young men. There are specific requirements from the South Carolina Athletic League that lay out water breaks, cooling stations, and unfortunately, in the intensity of competition and trying to get these guys fit, basically what's happening is that they're not giving them the breaks they deserve.
All right. Well, very interesting information. We really would invite you to call if you've been hurt at all in any type of accidents, or just have a question for Vic or Everett. Again, the number 803-442-4551. You're watching News 12 Law Call.
Closer to Neil and Vic and
Sure.
just try to sit up a little bit in the chair. And yeah, we should have a call coming back from the break. I think two of them? Just one. Thank you, Everett.
Okay. What's the guy?
Salt. I guess that's part of it too, right? Mm-hmm. Adrian? Mm-hmm. Welcome back. We'll take one of your calls in a moment. First, though, are all attorneys the same? Well, in tonight's legal brief, personal injury attorney Melissa Detch-Mende with some questions you should be asking when choosing someone to handle your claim.
When a lawyer cannot or will not go to court, the insurance companies love it. Settlements are then diluted or settled on a volume basis. Your claim is unique to you and your family. A trial lawyer will ensure that you receive what is necessary to take care of your medical bills, your lost wages, any permanent disfigurement, and future costs. So what should you look for when choosing a lawyer? Ask the lawyer if they're a member of the state or national Trial Lawyers Association, and if they attend them regularly. Each association teaches cutting-edge techniques and nuances of the law to protect you. Ask if they've tried a civil case in the last 2 years. A lawyer who tries cases regularly in the highest trial court is experienced in dealing with seriously injured accident victims. Ask what types of verdicts they have received. This will indicate the lawyer's ability in a trial setting. Ask what types of injury cases they regularly handled. Some are good in auto accidents, others in slip and falls, others in product liability. Sometimes lawyers handle several areas of injury law. With a trial lawyer, you and your family can be completely protected. Protected because the insurance company will be held accountable. I'm attorney Melissa Detchmundy of the Vic Hawk Law Firm. Back to you.
Thanks, Melissa. Well, we've got you covered tonight from Augusta to Florence, South Carolina, everywhere in between, with attorneys Everett Chandler and Vic Hawk. Our first caller is Harry from Georgia. Harry, how are you this evening?
Doing all right. How you doing?
Just fine. We understand you were involved, I guess, in a bit of an assault case?
Yeah, it was an assault. He was charged with battery, domestic violence. And I was trying to figure out, because he says I wouldn't get a dime because he draws SSD. And he only owns a truck. He doesn't own a house.
Yeah, he has Social Security disability. Harry, whenever you have a situation where there is an intentional like assault or what we call a intentional act that insurance does not cover, you're in a difficult situation. It's difficult to get a lawyer involved, but if you are intent in pursuing him, you would have the right to file a claim, and I'd suggest you file it in magistrate's court. It doesn't. It has up to $15,000 jurisdiction, and you can use the magistrate's court to get a court order against him, and it may prevent this from happening again. But it's difficult to pursue an assault kind of case because you just don't have any insurance coverage, and this guy's on Social Security disability. It'd be very difficult to get the blood out of the turnip on him.
All righty. Well, we have another call. Scott from Georgia. Hello, Scott.
Hello.
Hi. Boy, you got hurt at a fireworks show? Where did this happen?
Well, I'm going to say it's in Lincoln, Georgia.
Okay. And what exactly happened?
Well, I still got the projectile that hit me in the head. And I was wondering the statute of limitations on it.
Scott, the statute of limitations is 2 years on pursuing the claim against the fireworks organizer. Everett, it's different in South Carolina, isn't it?
Statute of limitations in South Carolina would be 3 years, and if it was a government entity that was actually performing the show, then it would be 2 years.
Yeah,
depending on.
And you know, governmental entities are really tricky because you have to send an ante litem notice, and you have to do the same in South Carolina.
We call it a verified claim.
Right, and you have to do that within 1 year, and if you don't do it, or in some cases 6 months, and if you don't do it, you cannot extend the statute to the maximum limit of 2 years in Georgia and 3 years in South Carolina. Is it 2 years in South Carolina?
It's actually it's 2 years if you file the verified claim. It's 3 years
Right.
with a government entity.
And Everett, is some of that a little bit like you bring your family out, you somewhat understand the risks of, almost like at a hockey game, you know, the puck's going to be flying.
Well, ultimately, I mean, that's what a jury's going to decide and how you're going to be evaluated, and that is the difficulty, and that's what we will explain, because sometimes just because you're injured, there are a number of circumstances that really affect your ability to recover, and a lot of it has to do with the available coverage, as with the last caller who didn't have any insurance, and then other issues that would actually be the extent of liability that the person who caused the injury. A DUI person who has DUI would, of course, be more culpable than someone who was texting while driving.
Good point. We have our first caller from South Carolina. Justine, how are you this evening?
How are you?
Oh, just fine, Justine. Tell us what happened inside your home.
I wasn't at my home. I was at work.
Oh, at work, okay. And where did you fall?
I fell when I had a stroke back here, and wasn't nothing did about it.
And so are you out of work now?
I'm out of work. I've been out of work ever since February.
Everett?
Well, Justine, the governing principle will, of course, be workers' compensation. This is a special type of law that protects individuals who are injured while they're on the job. Unfortunately, one of the requirements under workers' comp in South Carolina is that the injury has to be caused, the initial injury has to be caused by some effect that happened on the job and that originates. Because if it came as a result of the stroke, that would be a very difficult case, but I would need more information, and certainly we would, but give us a call if you have any questions. I'll be happy to meet with you and discuss it in more detail.
Well, we wanted to check in with Marilyn from Georgia. Marilyn, you were hit by an officer while in your car?
Yes, I was.
Were you both driving at the time, or
I was driving and he was driving, and he ran the stop sign and hit me, and I got injured pretty bad, and he went back to work. But I was wondering, is there something special you have to do?
Yes, there is, Marilyn. When you are involved in a potential claim against a governmental agency, you have to give this ante litem notice, and you should get with a trial lawyer as soon as possible. We handle those kind of claims every day, and we'll be glad to help you out. You have to give the ante litem notice, and then after that, you have to pursue the agency itself. If you fail to follow up, then you're going to be waiving your rights. We had a case come in just this last week where a lady got strung along by an adjuster for 2 years, and then the adjuster calls her up at 3:30 in the afternoon and says, we're not going to be able to help you settle your claim now, but you have to file it within the next 2.5 hours, and if you fail to do it, then the statute's run. So don't get strung out like that. Get a good trial lawyer to help you out.
And thanks for calling, for sure. That's the first step, but definitely contact one of the attorneys in the area. And we're going to be right back with more of your questions about the law. Again, the number 803-442-4551. It's all about injuries tonight on News 12 Law Call. Well, thanks so much to Aiken attorney Everett Chandler for handling our South Carolina calls tonight. If you have any questions related to personal injury, workers' comp, criminal defense, give him a call tomorrow at 803-644-5335 or online, thechandlerlawfirm.com. And on the other side of the river, the Vic Hawk Law Firm, handling many of the similar cases in Augusta, Thompson, Millen, Waynesboro, and Evans. 706-722-3500. You can also ask questions for Law Call at vichawklaw.com. Welcome back into the program. Several more minutes to go. You can still give us a telephone call with your questions. We have a call from David from Augusta. Hello, David. How are you?
How are we doing tonight?
Oh, just fine, David. We appreciate your call. Let us know what happened to you when you were on a temporary job.
Yes, on my second day of a temporary job, I was basically thrown into the deep water and put onto a high production company. I'd rather, not say what company it was, but they basically threw me into the deep water of the thing and started into the production. Now, I haven't worked any serious production work in more than a year, and then all of a sudden, all in one day, they basically threw me into it. Well, I took and wrenched my back out so severely bad. I mean, it was just painful. And I did report it to the supervisor. I was not offered any kind of a back brace in the job. I got to stress that. And when I took and got off work, I went to the VA hospital. Since I'm a disabled vet, I went to the VA hospital, and they said, after doing the x-rays, that I had taken and injured my back on it. So I was just wondering, I know they're going to try and file for workman's comp, but is it feasible to take and try to seek out a lawyer for this, or should I just basically just take the workman's comp and go back to work.
David, if they accept your claim, it would be against the temp agency that assigned you to that company. If they accept your claim and they pay your medical expenses and they pay your workers' compensation benefits, then great. You may not need a trial attorney, but if they deny the claim, you should consult a trial attorney right away. And I believe that when you start dealing with the temp agency, you're going to find that you're going to need a trial attorney to help you out. In situations like this, Everett, is it the same in South Carolina? If you go through a temp agency, you have to file your workers' compensation claim against the temp agency?
That's absolutely correct. In fact, most temp agencies, Bill, have workers' compensation insurance. You are right to go and report it. Initially, in the state of South Carolina, you must first report the injury. It has to be you were injured within the course of your employment. I know you are quite concerned about the fact that they threw you in the deep water, but fault is not even an issue when it comes to workers' compensation in South Carolina. If you're injured within the course of your employment, you are not goofing off, but in fact was injured doing your job, then you are entitled to compensation while you're being treatment, as well as any permanent injuries that you have. You may be compensated for that. It's important to get a lawyer to advise you, especially with back injuries. Those are very sensitive issues, and I would suggest, even if they're being cooperative, that you still contact and a trial attorney as Vic Hawk had indicated, in order to protect your rights.
Well, and you mentioned back injuries. We have a caller with another back injury as well. Your neck of the woods in South Carolina. Bill joins us from North Augusta. Bill's yours is unique like David's. David worked for a temp agency. You worked for a union, is that correct?
Yes, sir. And it's been, for many years, and I've been treated through a pain management for the last 5 or 6 years. But just recently I've been on a job where having to climb many steps, even though it's pointed out to the supervisor, that I have had back injuries, and it's starting to, pinch nerve where your leg just stays numb and tingling, almost unbearable.
Sure.
Wow.
Everett, is Bill entitled to workers' comp, do you think?
Well, without any question, the bill is entitled to workers' compensation, and any permanent damage, as I said earlier, that he's had to his back as a result of the injury on the job, he is entitled to that compensation, as well as lifetime medicals under the law.
Okay. Well, time for one more question. Sandra from Augusta. How are you, Sandra?
I'm fine. How are you?
Tell us what happened to your mother-in-law.
She was entering a store, and as we were walking in the door, it's like uneven pavement, and she fell and she broke her hip and her wrist. And I was wondering how long before we can sue, before the statute of limitation runs out, because it's been like maybe 2 months.
Okay.
Yes. Sandra, your mother would have the right to file the claim within 2 years of the date of the accident. It would be a good idea that you get someone out there to take pictures of the uneven pavement. It's a very common injury to elderly people because they have vision problems already. It generally creates an optical illusion when you have the uneven pavement, and the stores all know this. They just don't want to spend the money to fix it right. So she would have 2 years to file a claim, and she should consult a trial attorney as soon as possible. It's very common to have this particular type of accident and the serious injury arising from it.
Excellent. Well, we certainly appreciate all of our callers tonight. A lot of interesting and active situations going on, and we invite you to call Everett or Vic tomorrow based upon where you happen to live or where your accident happened. And gentlemen, thank you both so much for coming on the program.
Yeah.
Thanks for having me.
It was great.
Thank you for coming, Everett.
Man, it's a pleasure.
It's been fun.
Yes.
Yeah.
In fact, next Sunday, you can ask us anything. We're going to talk about any area of the law. Ashley Brown will be filling in for me. Going to get a few wisdom teeth out and a little R&R, and I'll be back in a few weeks.
So you'll be feeling great.
You're not kidding. Have a wonderful work week ahead, everyone.
Thank you all for calling.
Thanks.